I never boarded the plane. They called my group. People around me stood up, fumbling with carry-ons and half-eaten snacks. But I just sat there, Gate 47A, Indianapolis International, staring at the marble tile floor where her reflection had appeared like a ghost 2 minutes earlier. 9 years. I hadn't seen her in 9 years. And then, just like that, there she was, standing 20 feet away, laughing into her phone, a massive engagement ring catching the artificial light like a dagger made of glass. She was next to a man, mid-40s, confident, tall, the kind of guy you don't compete with because he doesn't even know you exist. But I knew her too well. You don't forget the woman who destroyed your entire nervous system with a 3-word voicemail and a 4 a.m. disappearance. And yeah, maybe this sounds like I'm being dramatic, but tell me how you'd react if the woman who blew up your life without explanation vanished like a ghost and left you answering questions from her parents, her friends, and the police, just strolled into an airport like she didn't leave behind a war zone. Let me be clear. Maisie didn't just break up with me. She evaporated. The last time I saw her before this was on a Tuesday. Normal. She made pancakes, kissed me goodbye, told me to text her something cute before lunch. That night, I came home to a wide-open door, a missing suitcase, and a voicemail that simply said, "Don't look for me. I need you to trust me. Goodbye." I played that message 173 times before deleting it. I counted. That's the kind of person I became. The guy who memorizes the number of replays like it's going to unlock a hidden code. I filed a missing person report after day 3. By day 12, her best friend told me to stop calling. By week 5, I stopped going to work. By month 3, my landlord changed the locks while I was asleep inside. You think you'd move on after 9 years. You don't. You build a shell. You tell people you're working on yourself. You cut your own hair, start wearing joggers with a button-up shirt, pretend that drinking almond milk and journaling makes you whole. But the truth is, I never healed. I just paused. Until today, there she was, walking past a Starbucks, holding hands with someone who clearly never got the voicemail. I wasn't going to say anything. I swear I wasn't. But then she turned her head, just slightly, not enough to see me, but enough to see something in her face I hadn't expected. Fear. It flickered. It vanished. But I saw it. And that's when I knew. Whatever story she built after me, it's made of lies. And it's starting to crack. And the messed up part? I don't even want revenge. I just want to know why. I wasn't supposed to be at that gate. That morning, my original flight got canceled due to some mechanical issue, so they rebooked me through Denver. Terminal C, Gate 47A, Flight 1829, departing at 3:15 p.m. I didn't argue. I was too tired to care. I was flying out to close out my late uncle's storage unit in Utah. He died alone, surrounded by unopened letters and a cat that had been dead for 3 days before anyone found them both. That was the kind of week I was having. And now this. Her. Maisie. Except, according to the digital passenger manifest scrolling across the boarding screen, her name wasn't on it. Not Maisie Dorn. Not Maisie anything. I checked 3 times. I even stood near the little kiosk just to catch a closer look. The man she was with? Graham Whitner, according to his tag. VIP priority. They boarded early. She walked beside him quietly, head low, sunglasses on. Inside, which I thought was weird. Maisie used to hate wearing sunglasses indoors. She said it made people look like they were hiding from their own face. I should have let it go. I should have turned around and walked away. But my feet stayed glued to the tiled floor, like they were listening harder than my brain. Because here's the thing. Maisie disappeared without a single trace. She didn't empty the joint account. Didn't touch the emergency cash we kept under the kitchen sink. She left behind her social media accounts, untouched. Like her life just froze mid-scroll. The police dropped the case after 2 months and labeled it voluntary disappearance. Said there were no signs of foul play. No crime. Just absence. I was the only one who couldn't leave it alone. You don't just walk out on someone after 4 years, kiss them that morning, and then vanish. Unless there's something bigger, something darker, underneath it all. And now here she was, flying under a fake name, with a man who looked like he wore expensive secrets for breakfast. I sat there, still not boarding, still holding my ticket like it was a riddle, watching that jet bridge swallow her whole. A million questions surged all at once. Was she running from something? Was she being protected? Or worse, was she part of something I wasn't supposed to survive? Because now I was thinking back, really thinking, and stuff that didn't make sense back then started bubbling up again. The strange phone calls she'd take on the fire escape. The envelope I once found in the coat closet. Thick, sealed, marked L.T. Destroy if unopened by December 21st. She said it was a play script for her acting class. That was a lie. She hadn't taken classes in years. There was also the night we were followed. We were walking home from a movie. A gray SUV kept creeping behind us, lights off. I joked that maybe we were in a spy movie. She laughed, but I swear she was sweating. She claimed it was just because of the heat. I believed all of it. Every lie. And now I was sitting here realizing that I hadn't been in a relationship. I had been part of a story I didn't write, surrounded by chapters one never read. Maisie wasn't who she told me she was. Not back then. And definitely not now. The plane had started taxiing. And I was still at the gate. Still holding on to a ghost and lip gloss. Still watching the exit door. And that's when I made the worst, or maybe the best, decision of my entire life. I opened up my laptop, connected to the airport Wi-Fi, and typed a name I swore I'd never say out loud again. Maisie Whitner. The last name of the man she was with. Let's just say what I found was not a LinkedIn profile. And that's when things started to turn ugly. The search results came slowly, like the internet was thinking twice before showing me what I wasn't supposed to see. I typed Maisie Whitner into the bar and hit enter, half expecting nothing. I mean, Whitner? That could have just been the guy's last name. Maybe they were married. Maybe she changed it. Maybe it was a coincidence and I was chasing ghosts. Again, like I had for the past 9 years. But the first result that came up wasn't some Facebook profile or old wedding announcement. It was a name buried in a quiet little headline from 8 years ago. Private intelligence consultant Graham Whitner marries mystery partner in closed-circuit ceremony. No photos. No guest list. No details. Just a blurry image of Graham shaking hands with someone at what looked like a private marina. The bride's face was hidden behind a sun hat and a strategically placed bouquet. But I knew that chin, that wrist, that exact curve of her fingers as she adjusted the rim of the hat. That was Maisie, married, 1 year after she vanished from my life like vapor. I sat there, knees bouncing, hands sweaty, throat dry like I'd swallowed static. I dug deeper. I found scattered breadcrumbs. A property in Telluride purchased in her husband's name, with a secondary resident listed only as M. Whitner. A foundation registered in their names in Bermuda. A sealed court record in Nevada filed under emergency petition for name protection. I didn't know what that meant, but it didn't sound romantic. This wasn't just a woman who left a relationship. This was someone who vanished into something, like she'd joined a new life that had no room for the version of her that once burned pancakes and made me sleep with a pillow barrier when we argued. And here's the part that won't leave me alone. I wasn't just some ex she ghosted. I was the last person to know her before she disappeared, before she became whoever M. Whitner was. So why didn't anyone ever contact me? No cops, no lawyers, no private investigators, nothing. It's like I was erased from the narrative, and maybe that was the whole point. Maybe I had seen or heard something I wasn't supposed to. Or maybe I was simply a loose and she needed to cut. But why now? Why show up in this airport, at this time, on this day, where I'd be able to see her? It didn't feel accidental. Especially not when the second search result loaded. This one didn't have a picture or a news article. It was a case file reference, archived on a deep government contractor website I had no business accessing, even through the public side. Most of it was redacted. All I could make out was the case number. It had her initials. M.D. Not M.W. Not Maisie Whitner. Maisie Dorn. My last name. Still attached to her in an official capacity. That was impossible. We were never married. She'd refused. Said she didn't believe in contracts. So why was my name still linked to hers in a sealed document 8 years after she disappeared? My stomach twisted like someone had just flipped gravity upside down. I started shaking. Like, actually shaking. People at the gate probably thought I was having a panic attack. And maybe I was. But not because of heartbreak. Because something wasn't right. This wasn't just betrayal. This was cover-up. Layers of it. And I was starting to realize I hadn't just been left behind. I'd been intentionally removed. Disconnected from someone who didn't want me to know what she became. And still, a question lingered in the back of my mind. What if she'd done all of this not to escape me, but to protect me? Except if that were true, Why had she looked so afraid when she saw me at the gate? Because that wasn't guilt in her eyes. It was panic. And now I needed to know, was it because I saw her? Or because someone else saw that I had? That's when I noticed the man in the black jacket staring at me. Not from across the terminal, but 3 seats away. And he wasn't blinking. I didn't look at him directly at first. You know how your instincts sometimes clock something before your brain does? That was me. My body knew, before I consciously registered, that something was wrong. There was a guy sitting just 3 chairs to my left, wearing a matte black jacket that looked a little too clean, a baseball cap with no logo, and plain jeans with boots that had never seen a scuff. I caught his reflection in the darkened glass near the window, and the thing that jumped out at me wasn't his clothes or posture. It was the fact that he wasn't blinking. He was just sitting there, silent, perfectly still, hands folded on his lap like a mannequin that someone had taught how to breathe subtly. No phone, no book, no drink, and no boarding pass in sight. Everyone else around me was distracted, scrolling, calling home, herding toddlers. Normal airport noise. But this guy? He was locked in, staring in my direction with the kind of calm that screams control. I started tapping my laptop touchpad like I was still focused on the screen, but I wasn't. I was trying to measure whether I was being watched or if I'd finally cracked under the pressure of seeing her again. Then came the moment that cemented it. A text popped up on my phone. Unknown number. No name. No contact photo. Don't follow her. Go home. My chest tightened like a fist had clenched around my lungs. I stared at the message, pulse thudding in my ears. No typing bubble. No second text. Just those 6 words. I looked around, suddenly hyper-aware of everyone. Was someone behind me? Above me? The guy in the jacket hadn't moved. He was still watching. I stood up slowly, trying not to shake, grabbed my bag, and walked toward the bathroom. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I needed space, a mirror, a stall to hyperventilate in if necessary. I pushed into the restroom, leaned over the sink, and stared at myself. Same tired face. Same coward's heart pounding in my throat. But something was different now. I wasn't just a guy who saw his ex at the airport. I was a variable in something much bigger, something that didn't want to be noticed. Maisie's disappearance had always felt strange. But this was no longer about heartbreak or abandonment. This was about being warned off, monitored, controlled. And it wasn't the first time something like this had happened, not really. I started remembering things I hadn't let myself think about in years. The time I came home to find the front door unlocked, nothing missing, but one drawer in the bedroom, the one where she kept old photos and letters, emptied out. She said she'd moved everything into storage. We didn't have a storage unit. The voicemail from an unknown caller 2 days after she vanished, which just played static for 13 seconds, then hung up. The note I found in the back of my closet 3 years later, stuck behind a shoebox. If you love her, stop digging. I thought it was some sick joke. Now I'm not so sure. Back at the gate, the boarding process was finishing up. Her plane was about to take off. I stood in the bathroom, shaking, heart ricocheting inside me, wondering if I should board mine, or find out where hers was headed. But before I could decide, another text came in. This one had no words, just a photo. It was me, sitting at the gate, staring at my screen, taken from behind. They were closer than I thought. That's when the bathroom lights flickered once, then twice, then went out for exactly 2 seconds before snapping back on. And when they did, the guy in the black jacket was standing by the door. He didn't say a word. He just smiled and walked away. I didn't move for a full minute after the man in the black jacket walked away. Not even a breath. It wasn't fear holding me still. It was the weight of something more complex. The slow, heavy realization that I wasn't just being watched. I was being measured, calculated, like someone, somewhere, had been waiting for me to stumble into this moment, and now that I had, the rest of the dominoes were ready to fall. The lights flickering in the bathroom could have been coincidence. The photo of me at the gate, maybe someone hacked a security feed. But that smile, that brief, subtle smirk from the man in black, that was the kind of expression someone gives when they're not just watching a game, they're winning it. I returned to the gate, trying to stay calm. My hands were shaking, but I kept them in my pockets. Flight 1829, the one she was on, was gone. It had already left the tarmac. I missed my own flight too, of course. But that didn't matter anymore. I wasn't going anywhere. Not until I knew the truth. I sat back down at the gate, trying to look like just another tired traveler scrolling through my phone. I searched for any public info on Flight 1829. It was heading to Santa Fe. That caught me off guard. Why Santa Fe? Why somewhere so quiet? Maisie was always drawn to big cities, bright lights, places where no one cared who you were. But Santa Fe? That was off-brand. Off-grid. I dug deeper and found something I wasn't ready for. Santa Fe had one registered company under the name Whitner, a private security consulting firm with no website, no listed phone number, and no employee roster. Their registered address was a P.O. box. And yet, the company had cleared 5 government contracts in the last 4 years, including one with a Department of Defense vendor whose name I didn't even recognize. That wasn't just unusual. That was deliberate obfuscation. Maisie hadn't just reinvented herself. She'd gone completely off-record and had help doing it. I sat there, spiraling, until a sudden noise pulled me back. Laughter. High-pitched, familiar. It was coming from a woman at the coffee shop across the terminal. I glanced over automatically, and that's when I saw it. The necklace. It was a simple silver pendant with an etched design, a moth with outstretched wings. The kind Maisie used to wear every single day. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't worth much. But she once told me it had been her grandmother's. She swore she'd never take it off. I remember running my thumb across it while she slept beside me, her breath steady, the chain glowing faintly under the moonlight. And now this random woman, brunette, early 30s, laughing with her friend about something meaningless, was wearing it. The exact same necklace. Not a copy. I would bet my soul on it. I stood up without thinking, legs moving before my brain could catch up. I walked over casually, pretending to glance at the pastry display like some guy debating a croissant. But my eyes never left the pendant. And that's when I saw it, engraved on the back in barely visible script. To M. Let no one silence you. My gift. My engraving. It was hers. I must have been staring too long, because the woman caught my eyes, startled, and immediately tucked the necklace under her shirt. She looked around nervously and whispered something to her friend. The friend leaned in and glanced at me. They both stood up and began to leave. Quickly, I followed. Not because I wanted to scare them, but because at this point I needed to know where that necklace had come from. Had Maisie given it away? Lost it? Was this woman connected to her? I trailed them past 2 terminals, careful to stay 3 or 4 bodies back. They never looked behind them. Not once. Until we passed Gate 32, where a janitor's cart blocked one side of the corridor and forced us into a narrower line of people. The woman stopped suddenly, turned, looked me dead in the eyes. She didn't ask what I wanted. She didn't demand I stop. She just said, with a calmness that chilled me to the bone, she said you'd come. Then she turned and walked away. And I stood there, caught in a moment I hadn't prepared for, trying to figure out whether I had just uncovered the edge of a deep truth or stepped into a trap 9 years in the making. I don't remember walking back to my hotel. I must have. I had the key card in my hand and the blister on my heel to prove it, but my brain was fogged over with adrenaline, confusion, and that line echoing in my head. She said you'd come. Like it had all been rehearsed. Like I was already playing a part in a script I never auditioned for. I locked the door behind me, turned off the lights, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the necklace I now held in my hand. I didn't steal it. The woman, the one at the coffee shop, had slipped it into my jacket pocket when she passed me in that narrow corridor, like it was a handoff, like I was supposed to receive it. The chain was warm, like it had been worn for hours. I held the pendant under the reading lamp, rotating it slowly, trying to decode something I wasn't even sure existed. But then I noticed something strange. The engraving on the back wasn't smooth. I ran my fingernail over the lettering. To M, let no one silence you, and caught the tiniest indentation just past the final U. It was like a notch. Not accidental. I fetched the only magnifying glass I owned, a cheap keychain one I kept for reading tiny prescription labels, and tilted the pendant under the light again. There it was. A series of microscopic etchings, invisible to the naked eye. It looked like coordinates. And not just that, numbers layered over numbers. At first glance, it was gibberish. But something about the repetition made me feel like I was looking at something encoded. That's when I remembered. 9 years ago, Maisie and I used to leave each other stupid little notes in weird formats. Backward sentences, letter-replaced grocery lists, codes only the 2 of us understood. It was a game at first, but sometimes she took it weirdly seriously. One time she left a message on the back of a cereal box that looked like a grocery list, but every first letter spelled out a full sentence. You need to stop asking about Kansas. I didn't get it back then. I thought she was just being dramatic. She never even lived in Kansas. Or so I thought. I dug through an old folder I kept synced across every laptop I'd owned since 2013. A personal archive I couldn't let go of. Inside were photos, screenshots, and yes, a dozen of those coded lists from our apartment days. One caught my eye. It was labeled 8/14, Trader Joe's. The list seemed basic at first. Milk, apples, ice cream, sardines, eggs. But if you looked at the first letter of each line, it spelled maize, and then a space. No, why? That list always bothered me. It felt unfinished. But today, I noticed something else. Each item had a number beside it. 1%, 6, 3 pint, for cans, 12 count. That's not how she normally shopped. I lined up the numbers with the pendant's code, and suddenly, things started to match. She'd buried a cipher in that list. One she never expected I'd understand unless I was desperate enough. Or maybe she always wanted me to get desperate enough. The decoded numbers spelled out a zip code. 67503, Kansas. Specifically, a storage unit facility just outside a nothing town called Ellenwood. I Googled it. One of those weird, fenced-in complexes with keypad entry and rusty overhead lighting. The kind of place where people store old treadmills and wedding dresses they can't bring themselves to throw away. But Maisie never did anything without a reason. If she encoded that location in this necklace and made sure it ended up in my hands, it meant she left something behind. Something she couldn't carry into the life she now lived. Something she trusted only me to find. Unless it was a trap. Unless this was the final stage of whatever game she'd been playing. The kind where you only get answers if you're willing to risk walking through the part of your past you thought you'd buried. I booked the next flight to Kansas before I could talk myself out of it. And as I zipped up my duffel bag, I glanced out the hotel window just in time to see something strange. A man in a black jacket standing on the corner across the street. He was holding something in his hand. It was my hotel key card, the one I thought was in my pocket. I landed in Kansas just after sunset, the sky painted in smears of purple and bruised orange like someone had taken a lighter to the horizon. The rental car was waiting, plain gray sedan, generic enough not to raise eyebrows, but I still checked the trunk before I drove off. I wasn't being cautious anymore. I was being hunted. I felt it in the gaps between footsteps, in the subtle shift of glances from strangers at gas stations. Every quiet moment hummed with the possibility of surveillance. Ellenwood was smaller than I expected. One diner, one motel, a pharmacy that closed at 5, and a church that had a sign out front reading, "Even Jonah ran," until he didn't. I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be comforting or threatening. The storage facility sat on the edge of town, nestled behind a faded lumber yard, and an empty field overgrown with weeds that stood like guards in the dark. There was no one at the gate. No cameras I could see. The keypad didn't ask for a code. The gate was already open, slowly sliding back as if expecting me. Unit 117 was near the end of the third row. As I drove past the others, I noticed signs of life. Flickering lights, padlocks with fresh scratches, one unit with condensation dripping from the seams like it was hiding something cold. But 117 stood silent. The number painted in red, not white like the others. I stepped out, heart hammering in my chest. My breath fogged in the air, even though the night wasn't cold. The lock was gone. The door, slightly cracked open. This wasn't right. Maisie would have sealed it. She'd have encoded it, guarded it, turned it into a fortress of puzzles. But this was an invitation. Either someone got here first, or she wanted it to be found now, not later. I slid the door open. The smell hit me first. Dust, old paper, something chemical and faintly metallic. Inside was a single wooden desk, no drawers. On it, a small television with a built-in VCR, powered by a portable generator humming softly beside it. Next to the TV, a black tape in a plastic sleeve marked only with a red X. There was also a folder. Thin, unlabeled. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were 4 photographs, grainy, zoomed in, clearly surveillance. 3 were of me, at different airports, different years. One of them was from 2 years ago in Chicago, where I'd flown for a funeral. Another from Phoenix, waiting in line at a coffee shop. I hadn't even seen a camera. But she, or someone, had seen me. The fourth photo was of Maisie, but not with Graham Whitner. She was alone, disheveled, her hair pulled back in a way I'd never seen before. No makeup, pale, standing outside a nondescript building with high fences and no signage. And the look on her face. She looked terrified. The timestamp said it was taken 5 years ago, 2 years after she'd supposedly married Whitner. I turned to the tape, my hand hesitating over the play button. I didn't want to watch it. Not because I was scared of what was on it, but because I was scared of what it would confirm. That she was never who I thought. That I was just a variable in some bigger equation. Or worse, that I was the only person who ever really knew who she was, and they erased her because of it. I pressed play. Static. Then, her voice. Not a video. Just audio. But it was her. Unmistakably her. She sounded breathless, like she'd recorded this in a hurry. If you're hearing this, I don't know how much time I have. I don't even know if it's you. But if it is Wesley, I'm sorry. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because they told me if I stayed, you'd disappear. And I believed them. For years, I believed them. There was a crash in the background. Distant shouting. Then silence. I was part of something I didn't understand. I thought I could control it. I thought if I disappeared, they'd stop watching you. But they never did. You're not safe. You never were. You need to leave Kansas now. Don't dig further. They're watching everything now. Even this. The tape cut. Not ended. Cut. Mid-breath. I sat there in the silence, the static buzz still ringing in my ears like a phantom limb. My head throbbed. My mouth tasted like copper. I didn't know if I wanted to scream or throw up or drive my car into the woods and vanish myself. But I knew one thing for sure. She hadn't abandoned me. She had sacrificed herself for me. And someone, somewhere, didn't want me to know that. That's when I noticed something new on the desk. Something I swear wasn't there a minute ago. A phone. Burner model. Already powered on. No lock screen. One message on it. From a number labeled X. It read, "You took too long. They're already on their way." And right as I finished reading it, the generator died. The lights went out. And the unit door slammed shut behind me. The first few seconds after the unit door slammed shut, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't pitch black. Some slivers of light leaked in through the seams, but it was enough to make me feel buried. Like someone had sealed my past inside a box and now planned to bury it for good. I slammed my shoulder against the door, shouted, kicked, but it was no use. I was locked in. And then, something shifted. A mechanical click echoed above me, soft but distinct, not like a lock, more like a trigger. The generator hummed back to life. The lights flickered on, and behind the TV stand, a narrow panel in the wall creaked open. I stepped closer and saw a hidden recess, not deep, barely enough space to fit a small safe or a box. Inside was a manila envelope. Heavy. I tore it open and found something I hadn't expected. A passport. 2, actually. One with my name. One with Maisie's. Different identities. New photos. Stamped with real visas. Dated 4 years ago. There was also a handwritten note in her unmistakable script. "If you made it here, it means I was right about you. I always was. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to survive. And I wanted you to live, even if it meant hating me for it. I know you won't believe it yet, but this is almost over. You just have to follow the final step. Take the passports. Go to the place I marked in the back. Don't ask questions at the counter. Just wait." On the back of the note, written in red pen, was a name of a cafe. Café Solace, Santa Fe. No time. No date. Just a location. I didn't think. I just drove. 7 hours later, I was sitting in a dim, sun-warmed cafe tucked between a bookstore and a bike shop, staring into a cup of coffee that tasted like smoke and cinnamon. My hands were still trembling. I hadn't slept. I hadn't even changed my clothes. And part of me still believed this might all be a trap, or worse, a delusion I'd built to protect myself from the truth. But then the bell above the door rang. I didn't look up right away. I was too afraid. But when I did, she was standing there. Maisie. Not a dream. Not a shadow. Not a reflection in chrome. Her. She looked older. Different. Wiser. A little thinner. Hair tied back. No makeup. No diamonds. But her eyes, they were exactly the same. And they were filled with tears before she even took a step. She crossed the cafe like she'd been counting every tile for the last 9 years. Neither of us spoke at first. We just stared. I don't know how long. Maybe a minute. Maybe longer. Then she sat across from me and whispered, "I knew you'd find me." even when they said you wouldn't. I wanted to ask 100 things. Why she left, who they were, what happened to the woman she used to be. But none of it mattered anymore. Because in that moment, sitting there in the warm morning light, with her hands trembling just like mine, I realized the truth. She didn't abandon me. She protected me. She sacrificed her identity, her freedom, everything, to keep me alive, to keep me free. And now, after all these years of confusion, silence, surveillance, and running, we were finally in the same place again, together, and no one was watching. She reached into her coat and pulled out one last thing, a small, folded photograph. It was us, in our old apartment, me asleep on the couch, her curled up beside me, pretending to read, but clearly watching me instead. I didn't even know she'd taken it. She said, "I kept this. Every day, even when they moved me. It reminded me who I was before they tried to rewrite me." Tears filled my eyes. I didn't care who saw. I reached across the table and took her hand. For the first time in nearly a decade, her fingers didn't slip away. We didn't run. We didn't hide. We finished our coffee, walked out the door, and melted into a world that didn't know we had ever been apart. The war was over. And somehow, impossibly, we'd won.